all of us, let's examine what we could do if we had the power of the cosmos behind us. So, the universe is eminently powerful, and because we're part of it, we are too. But we've forgotten a lot about that. So what we have is, as a human race, as a species, we have spent the vast majority of our existence blaming things outside of us for things that go wrong, for destiny, for fate. We think of it as something that comes to us from the outside, as something that God has ordained down on us, or that the world itself has decided it's going to be against us. This is one of the things that we have fought against. Even born under a lucky star, we have all these sayings. Were you born under a bad sign? Were you destined for greatness or doomed to failure? And of course, were you charmed from birth or were you cursed from birth? Either way, going back as far as we can to ancient Greece, they had the three fates. They had Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. And these were the three ladies. They were sisters that were supposed to be the ones who governed everything that happened in your life. Clotho is the one who spun the thread of your life. Lachesis is the one who decided to pepper events throughout your life, fortunes good or bad, along that thread of your life. And Atropos was the sister who walked around with the shears and snipped it, usually just when something good was happening. So, but considering the time frame, it might have been something bad too. You know, it could have been war, but it was usually untimely. However, what if things are a little bit more Shakespearean than that? What if the fault actually does lie more in ourselves rather than in our stars? Caesar and Brutus were having a discussion, and Caesar said this to Brutus. And what he was referring to largely was the idea that every human being is born with the same rough capacity for greatness. We all have the same abilities to be cognizant of the world around us. We have creativity, we have logic, we have heart, we have fear, we have joy, we have pain. We all have the same basic tools in our box. What it becomes is a matter of how we use those tools and whether or not we use them to our fullest potential. So, basically, we're going to start with Hermetic laws. Now, all this, you're probably going, what does any of this have to do with physics? And we'll get there. Hermes was a teacher in ancient times. He was one of the greatest teachers, and he came up with these three Hermetic laws. And I know that we've all probably heard them before. As above, so below. As within, so without. And as the universe, so the soul. So since we can't measure really the universe or the soul because they're way beyond our capacity to measure, let's go with the first couple. As above, so below. If you draw your vision back out into the universe, and we've all seen images from the Hubble telescope. We've all seen images of these galaxies spiraling, things that we thought were just once stars, simple stars, very much like our own gaseous central ball that we all swirl around. But these are galaxies out there, and a lot of them are spiral galaxies, very much like our own. A spiral galaxy has all of its mass and all of its matter swirling around the density that is a supermassive black hole at its center. That gravitational pull makes things move. So bring your vision back down a little bit, closer to Earth, closer to home, and let's look at our solar system. We have our sun, and we have the planets that orbit around the sun. Same basic principle, bodies orbiting around something exercising power over it. And if we go even further in, here's our standard solar system model. If we come even further in, let's look at the Bohr atomic model. This is the most currently accepted model of how an atom interacts, or how an atom acts. An atom is a nucleus, a proton and a neutron, surrounded by orbiting electrons. So all from above to below to within, and without, of course, we have the same basic tenet. We have something drawing on something that's orbiting it. So this will bring us to basically Newtonian mechanics. And this is where the fun with physics starts. We are all very familiar with the basic laws of Newtonian mechanics. The first law states, objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and objects at rest tend to stay at rest, providing, of course, there is no external force acting on that body. The next one states that if you have force that acts on an object, acceleration of the object will happen. What happens when matter starts streaming toward a black hole? It accelerates faster and faster, so much so that time seems to stop outside of that phenomenon. And lastly, if you've ever worn a pair of roller skates or ice skates or ever been on a skateboard or skis, you're real well acquainted with this one. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as that skateboard falls out from underneath you, it shoots forward, you shoot up, and then down. So probably it rolls a little bit more than you do, but that's friction. Newtonian mechanics are not the only type of mechanics that the universe allows. Newtonian mechanics work on a macroscopic scale. So bodies, physical entities, physical constructs, things with mass and physicality. But the other kind of mechanics that it allows is quantum mechanics. And in the late 1920s, a scientist named Werner Heisenberg came up with this idea to explain why he couldn't lock on a subatomic particle and tell how fast it's going at the same time. No matter how perfect his math was, no matter how perfect the machinery was or the equations were, it is not inherently possible to fix a subatomic particle's position in space and time as well as its speed. That is because these subatomic particles are dual in nature. They're both particulate as well as wave at the same time. This is one of the things that makes it uncertain, is if you're catching it in that instant that it happens to be a particle, you can't measure the speed of the wave because it's not a wave at that time. So, I mean, this is all very, very simply put. What if our thoughts are actually very much like quantum? These quantum particles pop into and out of existence everywhere. They pop through other dimensions. I don't know about you guys, but I have thoughts that pop in and out of my head like nobody's business all throughout the day. Some of them come back and demand action. So what if these quanta are actually the universe's thoughts and we're the manifestation of that? Not going to go there because it's too much fun, but let's use that as the model for us. Our thoughts are the quanta. And the body that we have is the tool used to create the universe around those thoughts. Nothing gets created without a thought behind it. Nothing in the human world gets created without a thought behind it. You ask a child, you give them a crayon and a piece of paper and they draw a rainbow. That is what they're thinking of. They're not going to do it automatically. They're going to draw a flower. They're going to think about that flower and they're going to manifest it on that piece of paper. As a human being, these thoughts have a physical response within our bodies. They increase our blood pressure. They cause muscles to contract. They shoot adrenaline through our system. They make our physical bodies act, our tools work. And it's up to these tools to create the world around us. Thoughts are things. They're not measurable necessarily. Maybe they're more like the wave than the particle. The particle is what becomes of the thought when it manifests. The act of creation is the act of acting upon a thought. Nothing can happen in our world with us behind it without there being a thought first. whether it's a good thought or a bad thought. Everything starts up in here. Unfortunately, the world that we live in is fraught with distraction. And distraction has become so rampant that we're actually ceasing to create. So these distractions, just a few of them are social media. 3.2 hours a day are spent roughly on social media alone, not even counting checking your email, not even counting a Google search, random or intentional, and definitely not counting the YouTube rabbit hole. So that's what my Sundays are usually reserved for, is shooting down that rabbit hole and not coming out until dinner time. So if you take a 24-hour day, the average person is supposed to sleep 8 hours a day approximately. Most folks usually get about 6, so let's average it out to about 7. Take away those 7 hours, you have 17 left on 24 to be productive, to choose your destiny, to choose actions that will lead you to creating the world that you want to see in your future and for the future of your family. 17 hours, 9 to 10 of those hours every day are spent working 5 days a week. So that takes us down to, let's average at 9, so that takes us down to 8 hours of free time. 45 minutes travel to and from at the very least, so that's an hour and a half. 8 minus an hour and a half is 6.5. You've got shower time. Figure once or twice a day, depending on whether or not you work out that day, possibly twice, that's an extra half an hour. And it keeps whittling down and down and down. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, some of these distractions. Some of these distractions are being with your family. They're taking the kids to the ball game. They're going to a kid's recital. They're spending time with the family. Some of these distractions are wonderful, but they still deter you from chasing and securing the next step in your personal evolution, the next step in your family's security, in the creation of that destiny by the use of your own power. So, as we continue with a lot of these things, come on baby, we are getting assaulted by message units. Message units are all these other little distractions that we have around us. It's the light coming in from behind us. It's the noise of the other voices out there. It's the guy whose phone won't stop ringing at his desk while the other people are over here talking at the water cooler, having a very animated conversation that you wish you were in on, but you're not because you're actually doing your job or you're checking Facebook. But his phone won't stop ringing and you're really aggravated about it, and you wish he would just pick it up. These message units assail us constantly from every waking moment of our day. On the road, it's the car that just cut you off and that glint of sunlight hitting you right in the eyeball from the back window. Yeah, it only startles you for a second, but it startles you. It sets off a chain reaction in your body, a chemical chain reaction. Your adrenal glands, your cortisol, your stress hormones, everything shoots up through the roof. And that leads to the next thing that we're going to talk about, the hypnotic state. The hypnotic state is typically a means of escape from high stress. If you've ever been on the road and you're driving and you see the light turn red in front of you, you stop, you sit patiently, everybody else gathers around you, you're aware of it, you take a breath and you let it all out. And all of a sudden the guy behind you is honking because everybody else is a half a block in front of you already. You didn't even see the light turn green. You were in a hypnotic state. Your conscious state was altered by all these stress units. You needed to escape for a few seconds to gather yourself back together again. And then, of course, somebody else goes and stresses you out by honking at you. But, you know, that's what we do as people. Hypnosis can be a fantastic tool to help you achieve your goals. But most often these days, it's actually used as a way to control and manipulate us and our children and our parents and our siblings and everyone that we care about. It's a way to keep us under control of somebody else. I'm not going to go too deeply into the whole conspiracy theory thing because we all have our own theories on whatever's going on out there in the world, the people trying to control us and stop us from taking our power, and that's about as far as I'm going to go into that, and it's true. There are people and corporations, and yes, it's their job to make us focus on them, to take us out of our own seat of power so that we gladly give it to them. We even pay them to take it from us. But we don't have to. Once you're aware that this is what we're doing, we can make wiser choices. We can decide who we want to patronize and who we don't. This is your mind on overstimulation. Everything that you see here, you've got this little filter. He's a little bit off kilter from the actual egg of your brain here, but that's okay. And the pluses and negatives. The pluses are something that's called unknown, and the negatives are called unknowns. That filter is designed to keep the unknowns out of your brain. We do not like things that we don't know as human beings. We are afraid of the unknown. It's part of our programming that comes down from the time that we first set foot on the planes and stood up straight and went, oh God, what's over there? And decided not to run too fast because we didn't want to attract its attention. But the knowns are what create habits. And habits can be a good thing. Habits can be exceptionally useful tools. They can also be detrimental to us. But habits are powerful. So with the right tools, we can use their power to gear us toward the creation of the destiny that we want, the lives that we want to fulfill for ourselves, the lives that we want to see our children grow into and create for themselves. So knowledge is power. The more we're aware of what's going on and the way that people are trying to manipulate us, we can find creative ways around that. We can find the Matrix and the Coen brothers had it right. We are programmed. I'm not going to go into the holographic universe saying that we are programs, but we are programmed. Our responses to various things are programmed. And that decides how we wind up in life. Are our pockets empty? Are they flush with cash? Are we lucky? Or again, are we doomed? And basically, it determines whether or not you find something difficult or easy. If you've been led to believe the majority of your life growing up that you'll never get that right, it's too hard for you. You're always going to find things hard. You're never going to find things that are easy to do except things that you already know. The programming came from our parents and their parents and their parents and their parents. Again, this goes back to the fact that we're a cautious species and that we don't like change. But we can change. When I was a kid, it was in the 70s, and most of the time we had both parents, we had a mother and a father, because anything else was not really acceptable at that point in time. But if you had the mom and dad at home, usually the dad was the breadwinner, and occasionally, even if they tried to keep economic talk away from you, you could hear your dad come home fussing about maybe a new spot opening up at his job or a promotion that could be in the works for him if he worked really, really hard for it. And maybe you heard him say something like, God, this means $10,000 extra. That means, honey, we could be making $20,000 a year. We'd be middle class, solid, no problem. When you get that, when you're a kid, your father just created a set point for you. This is your success set point. $20,000, that means that you're in the money, honey. But in today's world, $20,000 barely means that you can keep a roof over your head or over your kid's head. And it sure doesn't allow for college or car upkeep or eating organic food, what's right for you, what's good for your bodies and your kids. $20,000 is not enough in today's world. So we have to create a new set point. And as you can see, yeah, in a lot of cases, that's why we don't get a chance to get where we want to get to, because we have these pre-programmed set points. You can't blame your parents for it. It was a product of the times. If they knew what we know, they would do things differently. They would have taught us differently, because their edicts, their rules, and their set points were always there to protect them, just the way that they laid them down to protect us. So, if your pockets pockets are empty, if you're flush with cash, or if you're one lucky duck, comes from your programming, and it comes from the fact that it's always what you've done. The limits that we bang our heads against are also a product of this particular programming. There are a couple of different ways that I'm going to touch on very briefly that will help us learn to soar past this programming and teach others around us to do it, and they're really, really basically very, very simple. So it depends on what you want out of life. If you want to improve your performance at your job, at your recreation, in a sport, if you want to dance better, maybe you want to break out of your routine. Maybe you're the kind that's always taken a staycation, never wasted the money on going somewhere, never figured, oh, nope, I'm going to need that, so let's leave it there, and we'll just sit out on the back patio and drink Mai Tais for a week and, put out the torches and pretend that we're in Hawaii. And that's great. But maybe what you really want to do is go backpacking through the Andes or take a Peruvian trip so that you can go see the Nazca lines or what have you. But you're afraid. And that's okay, because it's something that you've never done before. Being afraid is not a problem. Open mic night at the Improv. Anybody ever want to get up on stage but didn't quite have it? Yeah, okay. I'm not the only one, or am I the only one? So, karaoke is a whole nother story. A couple glasses of wine, I'm in great shape. So, I can't speak to anyone who's going to be hearing anything, but I'm feeling pretty good. Getting more from your passion, managing your stress. We all need to manage our stress a little bit better. But the way to do it is to learn the language that our brain speaks. Our brains don't speak languages. Our brain speaks in symbols. I can guarantee you that every one of you recognizes every one of those symbols. So, especially that one. So, and if you've never been to America, if you have no knowledge what American money is all about, even looking at that particular symbol as it twinkles and swirls and turns and glistens, you know that it means prosperity somehow. You don't know why, but it signals prosperity in the brain. Open your mind to the possibilities. The easiest ways to do that is through hypnosis and meditation. Hypnosis, again, opens your mind. It opens the holes in that filter that we talked about a little bit earlier to allow a few more unknowns in. It allows you to speculate on a positive level what some of those unknowns might bring about in your life. And it helps ease the fear and push that aside a little bit. So meditation does the same thing. And I don't know about any of you, but these particular states of consciousness, meditation and hypnosis in particular, self-hypnosis, these are altered states of consciousness. And I don't know about you guys, but in my life, there's a particular person who has basically threatened to disown me should I ever engage in the idea of altering my conscious state. Little does he know that sleeping every night is an alteration in your conscious state, that having a beer alters your conscious state, that sex is an alteration in your conscious state. So it's not a bad thing, it's a natural thing, just for the record. Rewiring your brain for success. Another way to do this, if you tend to be more motor skill oriented, is something called the mental bank system. It is a ledgering system. Ideomotor skills are hugely, hugely important in making things stick in your brain. If your richness or wealth set point is $20,000 a year and you want to start making $40,000 a year, you need to begin associating that amount of money, that number, with your name. So the mental bank system allows you a way to pay yourself mental bank bucks for every action that you take that gets you closer to creating that destiny that you want. Say you want to go back to school, earn a master's, earn a doctorate, what have you. You come up with a corresponding amount of mental bank bucks that you pay yourself. Say something like going to the school, actually pulling in there, going to the admissions office, finding out what it's all about, and facing all that god-awful paperwork That's a lot of work. That's very, very painful to an adult psyche. Because we've already been there. We feel like we've already paid our dues. And I ain't going to start all over again. But you want to, because you want to achieve that master's or that doctorate. So you go in there and you fill out that paperwork and you talk to a counselor and you get home and you journal that you just paid yourself 250 mental bank bucks because, man, that sucked having done that. But it got you one step closer to getting in. And as you begin to see this number pile up with every step that you take toward the creation of this goal, toward the creation of the destiny that you want, and the example that you're leading to your family, you are signing your name in script. Why schools are doing away with cursive. It's an idiomotor skill that plants things in your brain. Part of a conspiracy theory I'm not going to go into. They're taking away script, they're taking away an access to our own power again and our own control. So you build that number every time you do something that leads you toward that positive you want, and you sign off. Today I have, or today I, and then write your name in your signature, have $250,000. And then you write the symbol and then the numbers to really dig it in there. In my mental bank account, and you sign it just like you would a check. You're beginning to associate your name with enhanced productivity, with enhanced prosperity. And you'll find that it becomes easier and easier and easier to make these decisions, to do these things. It becomes almost automatic to face these unknowns with an open mind, with a mind that is no longer afraid of facing these unknowns. By rewriting your program, you are changing the